Welcome back to Talk of the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
And we welcome you back to Talk of the Town for this Monday, January 25th. I'm Gary Stevens. We'll be open line after the 11 o'clock news, but on this fourth Monday of the month, we spend this segment on a monthly basis with the now second-term Republican from R-Zeeland Township, represents part of Ottawa County in the State House. He is Bradley Slagh. He's on the other side of our Zoom connection this morning. Brad, good morning. Welcome back to Talk of the Town, and my first chance to say Happy New Year to you, sir.
It is, and a pleasant good morning to you, Gary. It's actually been the last two times I've been on, you and I have not connected, so it's good to see you again after really a whole quarter of a year.
Yeah. So, I think we know, Brad is a former Ottawa County treasurer. He's a money guy. So when we talk about quarters of the year, yes, that is somewhat of a financial type of term. And again, we appreciate Brad joining us, and you can join us as well in the conversation at 395-1450, 395-1450. New session of the State House, and you got some new responsibilities. Tell us what responsibilities you will have in leadership in the State House for this term that began at the beginning of the month.
Well, thanks, Gary. It is actually some new challenges for me. The first would be that I served on the correction. So all of it is budgets. Everything I'm going to be doing will be doing with the budgets as far as committee work. I am going to be responsible. I sat on the corrections committee last time as the vice chair. They have now asked me to chair the corrections budget. Interestingly, the corrections budget is 1/5 of our total general fund budget. So 1/5 of the total general fund budget comes into the corrections thing. It's a big budget, something that's a really important part of what we do here in the state of Michigan. I'm also going to be the vice chair of the Joint Capital Outlay, which is the group that helps to fund college and university buildings, community college buildings, and some buildings at the state level. And then I'm also going to be on the Eagle budget, and I'll also be on the higher ed and community colleges budget. So those are the four budgets I'll be on besides general appropriations.
Two questions about the committee assignments that you've been put there. First of all, Eagle. Would that include make sure that funding for the department that oversees the situation we're having right now with the flooding and with the high water levels? Is that under your auspices, or is that something else?
Yeah, from a budget perspective, their response team and the folks that do permitting and all that kind of stuff would come out of the budget that I'm going to be working on. Yes. Okay,
then certainly we've talked about it before. The COVID-19 outbreak really hit us, between the eyes. High water levels, erosion was something you were in the forefront on in your first term, and now you're part of that funding for the agency that's got to oversee that. And as I've said before, somehow high water levels is not going to take any not paying attention to the fact that our attention is being diverted right now by the COVID outbreak. That certainly has got to be taken care of.
Right. It does, and we need to continue to work on how do we permit stuff to be able to happen, and how do we do it in a way that is timely and enables folks to get stuff done that they need to get done. The fortunate thing for us is that water levels have actually receded between 8 and 12 inches since last summer. So right now the lake is moving in a way that's actually benefiting us a bit. So that's good.
Yeah, it is good. And, some might say, well, it was due. I mean, it's cyclical. We have high water levels. We have low water levels. I mean, we've seen both extremes over the last decade or so in the Great Lakes and in our area as well. The other committee is corrections, and one of your predecessors in the State House really became a champion for corrections reform, and Joe Havman. You still contact with him and all that, because obviously he's still very much involved in this particular aspect of our state life.
He is. Yeah. So Joe and I talk once in a while, and just either we're at a meeting together, or he shows up once in a while for our Bible study that we have on a Wednesday morning for legislators in Lansing. And so I've been able to touch base with him. I actually reached out when I found out I was going to be the chair. I reached out to him and said, "Okay, Joe, let's sit down and chat and talk about what things did you see out there that I should be aware of? What might be the pitfalls? What are the holes? How do we continue to move in a direction that's positive for the folks who are incarcerated? And how do we help them not only serve their time, but be ready to come back out and actually make a difference in their community?"
Now, you are involved in obviously the appropriations for the corrections budget, but I will ask you this question because of your position there. There are some who are saying that as the vaccines are rolled out in the state, that those who are incarcerated should get a priority about getting the vaccines because the COVID-19 rates of those behind bars are so high. Is that a legitimate situation, or is it just simply, hey, it's a self-interest type of, special interest type of situation?
Well, I think so I would make an analogy from the prison system, our correction system, to our senior citizens who are in nursing homes and that kind of stuff. Whenever you bring people together into tighter quarters, it's going to be any kind of an outbreak flares much more in those kind of situations. And so I think there is a reason for us to look at really seriously at getting our prisoners inoculated, as well as the staff inoculated for that, if they're willing to do it. I think there's some real wisdom in that to try and keep flare-ups of disease from happening.
Yeah, it is a little touchy thing because there are some who say, wait a minute, those who are behind bars, many of them, why should they get priority because they are, miscreants or, convicted miscreants that, law-abiding citizens are being penalized in that regard. But yet, there are others who say, hey, it's a compassion situation.
Right. And I once again, there's probably a middle line someplace in there that I think in most of our lives, we find that anything that goes all the way one way or all the other way is probably not the right answer. So someplace in the middle, I think, is the right place to be.
395-1450, 395-1450. If you have a question for State Representative Brad Slagh, he'll be happy to answer it at 395-1450. Now that you have new responsibilities in appropriations, can you look forward to anything that could be seen or heard in the governor's upcoming State of the State address? Or is it more of a case of, well, she might put policy forward on Wednesday, but yet we'll wait until the actual budget presentation is made by the budget director before you really see exactly what you might have to look for fiscal 2022 that begins on the 1st of October?
Right. So, a big deal. We've recently done our revenue estimating conference. Revenue estimating conference said, okay, based on all the federal dollars that have flowed in to the state of Michigan in the last year, we're actually doing fairly well. The concern is going to be, we've got a lot of businesses who have gone out of business. We've got property taxes that are probably not going to get paid in the same way. There's going to be some other issues as those things come upon us. So what are we going to do going into the future? I don't know that you're going to see a lot of direct response to those kinds of questions in the governor's speech. I think it's going to be a high level. We need to give money to businesses because they've been shut down, rather than let's open up the businesses so they can actually earn money. And it's going to be, we need to give money to schools to be able to do summer school and a bunch of those kinds of things. So those are the kind of things that I'm expecting to see on Wednesday night as the governor lays out her State of the State address.
Do you think the Republicans will have a response, Brad? I know you can't speak for the party, But do you think the Republicans will have a response right away, or will it be like last year where the Republicans made the response the day after?
No, I think, well, I guess how quickly that response comes, I don't know. What I'm positive of is that we've already been working on budget ideas for how do we move forward with the budget in the state of Michigan. Um, and I know that the House is working diligently on a plan in advance of this meeting. So we're going to have something to roll out soon.
Can we see a spirit of cooperation between the legislative and executive branches of government this year? Now that there's been some shifting around, the Republicans still have control of the House. The Senate didn't change because they're not up for re-election until until November of 2022. But you see that perhaps there might be some more cooperation, or is that frankly a pipe dream?
I think so. More cooperation was a phrase that you used in that question. Let me start with more. If you were to go back and say, how many bills did we pass last year as the House, and how many of those were 80% of the total House members that were on it, or more? I would guess that probably 2/3 of every bill, of all the bills that we passed last year, had 80% or more of the total members of the House voting in favor of it. So were we doing things that were really asking for participation across the board? The answer is yeah, we were. And we did get that kind of response. So are we going to get more than that? I'm not sure. The question I think is maybe that you were asking, and I'll jump to this, is can the legislature and the governor come to an agreement? Because even though the governor's team members, the Democratic folks who are on the House floor, voted for the bills, many of those things got vetoed at the governor's desk. So how do we gain more participation from the governor on things that folks within her party thought were really good ideas? That's going to be the question. How do we do that, I think, over this next 2 years?
Yeah, because right now there's still some, I don't want to say acrimony, but there's still some division between the executive and the legislative branches of government about what direction the state should be going in. Instead of teamwork, it's almost as if my way or no way right now. And unfortunately, it's a two-way street. And I'm not seeing that from the legislature, and I'm not seeing that from the governor's desk. And maybe the old close the doors, bring the pizza and the soft drinks in might be necessary, and sort of hammer this out like they used to do in the old days of the labor unions when they have to hammer out a contract with management.
There we go. And I think there's wisdom in that. I think much of what happened that actually did get accomplished the last term while I was there did get hammered out behind closed doors, both on the Republican side. So we went behind closed doors and said, hey, I know that some of you folks don't like where we're headed with this particular legislation, but how can we make it better so that you could be on board? And we've done that, I think, with the governor and her staff, as well as the legislature, and gone behind closed doors and made that happen. So I'm hoping it can go right back there.
As we speak, Brad, we're going to have another press briefing in about 2.5 hours from now with Governor Whitmer, along with Dr. Khaldun and the new director of the State Department of Health and Human Services, Elizabeth Hertel. Her husband, of course, is a state lawmaker. She took over on Friday when Director Robert Gordon announced his resignation with immediate effect. The pause button gets pulled on most things next Monday. Is it a little bit late for this, or your thoughts about the fact that we're going to see some limited dining coming up on the 1st?
Well, first of all, I'm ecstatic that we're going to have some limited dining out. I love to be able to go out to eat once in a while. I maybe don't do that all the time, but I love to make it happen. So I'm looking forward to that. I think the folks in the restaurant industry that I've talked to are saying at 25%, there's many of them who feel, especially the small business owner, the small restaurants, who have 10 or 12 tables in a restaurant, they're like, at 25%, there's no reason to open. We just can't, you can't afford to put staff on for as few tables as you're going to be able to actually have customers that you're going to be able to have. They can either better not open or stay just as a carryout kind of thing.
Peg McNichol has a question in the newsroom.
With the carryout and delivery, they do have a certain amount of staff. And this is the part that I don't understand. Just because they reopen for in-person service, granted it's at 25% and there's a 10 p.m. curfew, that doesn't take away carryout. In fact, in an informal survey on Facebook, WHTC listeners say they will do one or both, dine-in, carryout, delivery. They'll still continue pursuing somehow supporting local restaurants, but the dine-in may bring them more customers.
The answer is absolutely. It will bring them more customers, but is it enough to support the addition? If you've got enough staff to cover carryout, you now have to add staff to be able to bring people into your establishment, because there's cleaning, there's a whole bunch of other things that go into taking care of inside customers that you don't have if you're just simply doing takeout. That's the piece that they're saying, for that extra 25%, if you're a very small shop, it isn't worth bringing extra staff on to be able to do that.
395-1450. Good morning. You're on the line with State Representative Brad Slagh.
Good morning. Two comments here. Number one, the governor wants to shut down, or he's in the process of shutting down Line 5 at the Straits of Mackinac. We have a state that probably has some of the best engineering colleges, universities in the country, and she always refers that, what does science say? And I'm curious what the academics, what the professional engineering would say about shutting that line down, that tunnel would be the answer, or is this just another bucket list, liberal bucket list that they're going through? And the second thing is, I heard reports about a prison, I believe it's down near Coldwater, and this was put on by the prisoners. And to be honest, after they told it, I thought they were talking about a resort with all the things that they could do. Now, I don't think the prison should be the Shawcrank redemption type, and I think education should be offered and anything to rehabilitate prisoners. But to make it sound that good doesn't seem right to me.
I appreciate the comments. Brad, can you respond?
So let's start with the prison one first. I've been in the Coldwater facility, and what I saw, you would definitely not want to be there if you, if you had to be at a prison, maybe that would be one of the ones you would choose, but you would definitely not want to live there. I've seen the living conditions. It's close, lots of people, lots of tight quarters. I've seen where they have their, they've got some work, vocational education stuff there on campus. So that part's good. That part would help you feel like, oh, I actually can be productive and I can learn a trade so that I'm ready to move out. But it's definitely not high-end living, I can tell you that.
And the other point was the Enbridge Line 5.
Yep, Line 5, the science, based on what I understand, the science of embedding, cutting through the rock 100 foot below the surface of the water, maybe 100 foot below the ground level underneath the water, would get us a chance to be able to bury a line so that it can't do anchor strikes and all those kinds of things. Based on my understanding, that science is sound. They've done tunnels around the world to do those kinds of things. I believe that it's the way that we could get this out of the Great Lakes, and it would be something that we ought to be working on soon.
Caller that's on the line, unfortunately, we're out of time. I'm sorry about that, but State Representative Brad Slagh, thank you very much for joining us this morning on WHTC's Talk of the Town. Look forward to chatting with you again next month.
Great deal. I appreciate you having me on. And if they've got ideas that they wanted to pass along, happy to take those either on my Facebook or my direct email, or I'll call to my office.
Thank you very much, Brad Slagh on WHTC.